Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 1st, 2022 Board of Education meeting. We will begin with an invocation from the Union County Sheriff Office.
Father God, as we pause right now to thank you for your love, for your mercy, and for your grace, we ask that you just grant this board wisdom. Your word tells us that all we have to do is ask, and you will give it to us, and give it to us more than we can handle. Then, Father, we ask for the wisdom that passes our knowledge. And we ask now that you just help us as this board endeavors to lead this county and these schools to train up these children, because these children will be leaders that will be leading our county and our community of tomorrow. And we thank you for this fact and ask now that you just continue to bless them, continue to keep them safe, and continue to watch over them as they endeavor to do their job. Father, we ask that you just be with us as we support them, as we back them, as we are here to help them in any way possible. We ask that you give us wisdom in how that we can help them when they need it. Father, we give you tonight, and we just ask now that everything that happens as you lead, guide, and direct us will be your will for our lives. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Call this meeting to order, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I need approval of the agenda. So moved.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a change and pull item P off the consent agenda, which is number 6, and refer that back to Policy Committee. That would be item P, which is Policy 5.1, Selection of Instructional Materials. I request it be referred back to Policy Committee.
I move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will now move to the John H. Crowder Service Award. Mrs. Hindhill.
Good evening. The late John H. Crowder spent more than 30 years serving the children of Union County. As a living tribute to him and his legacy, the Union County Board of Education awards the John H. Crowder Service Award every month to an outstanding high school student who is making a difference in their school and community. Students who receive this award are not only academically successful, but also have an established history of community service. Want to join me? Tonight, we award the John H. Crowder Service Award for March to a senior, 13th year, at Union County Early College. Dominic Dunn makes an impact at Union County Early College and in his community every day. He has held numerous leadership positions throughout his high school career. He is currently the student body president for South Piedmont Community College and serves on the president cabinet of strategic planning and the board of trustees. During the summer of 2021, Dominic developed a successful COVID-19 vaccine clinic as a member of Interfaith Youth Corps. He also volunteers the second Wednesday of each month at a veteran coffee house event. He sets up and does registration at the event. Dominic also volunteers as an intern at a local CrossFit gym, where he runs weekly classes under the supervision of licensed coaches. Dominic is a leader in his classroom and has taken the most challenging course load. He has excelled academically and will graduate in May with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. Mr. Porter, the principal at Union County Early College, said Dominic gets it done. Since the day I met him, he has been a leader, motivator, go-getter, hard worker, and inspiration. Dominic embodies what it means to be a Union County Early College Cyclone. After graduation, Dominic plans to attend the University of North Carolina at Greensboro as part of the Lloyd International Honors College. He plans to major in sustainable hospitality and tourism management. Board members, please join me in congratulating Dominic Dunn as the March 2022 recipient of the John H. Crowder Service Award. Congratulations. Thank you very much. You're going to do great things. Nice to meet you. They're going to want pictures.
I will now turn it over to Dr. Harris for the Influencers Award.
Good evening. We are pleased to recognize two outstanding employees who have been named the USPS Influencers for March 2022. This program celebrates the passion, dedication, hard work of USPS employees. Each month, our staff members, students, families, and community members nominate a USPS employee to be recognized for the positive influences they've had on our organization. Tonight, I am honored to present Miss B. Householder, a teacher at Poplin Elementary, and Mr. Frank Henson, a bus driver from Piedmont and Porter Ridge Cluster Schools. I will now invite nominators to the podium to read their submissions and recognize the honorees' accomplishments.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Yerkes, and I'm a parent of a third grader who's in Mrs. Householder's class. Miss Householder, will you come stand here? We are so thankful for B. Householder. Our son had a horrible start to third grade. It was a nightmare. I can't even explain. He was filled with anxiety about school in general, and Mrs. Householder worked with him for weeks just to get him to enter her room and stay calm. A 504 was created, and Mrs. Householder was essential to making that the best plan for him. She gave great insight and put more work on herself to make sure that he was successful in everything he did emotionally and educationally. He now has made a total 180 since the beginning of the school year, and he loves going to school. He told us that if something ever happened to his dad, that he would want to be taken care of by Mrs. Householder. He is involved in a lot of extracurricular activities now, and he has shown so much independence and confidence. She makes every effort to help him with his anxiety, and she helps him in the classroom in ways we didn't even know he needed. She is very fair to all of her students, and I know that she treats all of her other students in that classroom the same way. This type of teacher is the teacher that I want for my child every year. So that's it.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Davis. I'm the Northern Region Transportation Manager for Union County Public Schools. I am pleased to present Mr. Frank Henson with this award. Mr. Henson, will you come forward, please? On January 20th, one of Mr. Frank's high school students had a medical emergency. He stayed calm. He knew what he needed to do to get her medical attention. He radioed me for 911 assistance. I called the emergency medical services, who got there to help the student. Mr. Frank was composed on the radio and handled the situation correctly and efficiently. Mr. Frank, thank you.
I will now read the UCPS Influencers Proclamation from the Board of Education and Dr. Houlihan. Whereas the Union County Board of Education values the hard work of each employee within the district, whereas performance is an essential part of the district operations, whereas B. Householder and Frank Henson exemplify the performance, dedication, and teamwork essential to the success of the district and its students. Now, therefore, the Board of Education for Union County Public Schools and Dr. Andrew G. Houlihan, Superintendent, hereby proclaim B. Householder and Frank Henson as UCPS influencers for the month of March 2022. Congratulations. I'm not done. All right. It is our pleasure to recognize a very talented and dedicated group of educators who have worked very hard to achieve their national board certifications for professional teaching standards. This is a lengthy process that has strict guidelines for completion. Candidates for national board certifications submit a portfolio containing 4 different entries. Each portfolio entry requires direct evidence from teaching and detailed analysis of instruction. This is reflected in students' work and videos. Tonight, we honor teachers who have received their national board certification for the first time. As I call your name, please stand. Stephanie Carnathan, Cuthbertson High. Rachel Lukasic, Porter Ridge High. Carlene McIntyre, Rockrest Elementary. Caroline Templeton, Sardis Elementary. Alexandra Sanatiago, Marvin Ridge High. Marissa Lantizo, Kensington Elementary. Kathleen Ziwali, Marvin Elementary. Laura Conway, Porter Ridge Middle. And Susan Lethko, Porter Ridge Middle. Congratulations. You may be seated.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to public comments. At every regular meeting of the Board of Education, up to 60 minutes has been allotted for public comments. The board will not respond to public comments. However, a member may ask the chair to obtain clarification. Residents, parents, students, and employees of the district will receive priority on the list of speakers. If a speaker is not present when his or her name is called, the opportunity to speak will be considered waived. Only persons signed up to speak may speak, and speakers may not give their time to another person or have someone speak on their behalf. Speakers may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will not hear in open session complaints about performance of school personnel, personnel issues, or confidential student issues. Should a speaker wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, our staff are available to address your concerns or provide information. Dr. Brad Breedlove, Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Bashan Harris, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Colin Moore, Assistant Superintendent for Administration and Operations. And Jared McCraw, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, are here to assist. Our first speaker tonight is Clara Stevens is not here. I apologize. Kelly Cartarelli.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Cartarelli, and I'm the parent of a student at WMS. My child is in 6th grade, and let me tell you, things are starting to get rough between apps and TV, and even on the bus. She is being exposed to a lot lately. Sometimes it gets a bit overwhelming trying to keep up with it all, and I totally understand why parents are curious and even slightly concerned with what their child has access to. I understand the desire to soften or sanitize the world around us. And as this past week has proven, it's an unbelievably scary place sometimes. However, the realities of the world are still there, whether we like it or not. Recently, there's been a push to remove books from our schools. Parents want to shield their child from the difficult content. I get it. It's 100% their right. However, we shouldn't be removing access for everyone, especially if Follett, the library management system used by all of our schools, allows parents to see all of the books that their child has checked out at any given time. Honestly, I didn't even realize this was a thing until recently. I got an overdue book notice, and my kid doesn't check out books that often, so I was thrilled she had even checked one out. So I just don't think that if we have the access to the information available, that we should be limiting access for everyone, when all as parents we want is to be informed of what our child is up to, which gets more and more difficult every single day. Thank you.
Noyes Harrigan.
Good evening. My name is Noyes Harrigan. I'm a parent at Sun Valley, of a Sun Valley middle schooler, and I'm also a former teacher with 13 years of experience teaching in public schools. I'd like to talk tonight a little bit about technology in the post-COVID era. During the times of COVID, the Chromebooks and Canvas were really a lifeline. I mean, they were instrumental in ensuring education continued despite quarantining and absences and unpredictable schedules. And many teachers began using Canvas for the first time, and they used it for many of their assignments. And this was useful when we needed it. But that time is now past. However, there are some classes that still take place almost exclusively through the Canvas portal. Brain pops, quizzes, iEd puzzles have replaced teachers who interact with and run activities in real life, and there are no textbooks anymore. This is how I found out my son spends most of his day on his Chromebook. A few months ago, his Chromebook died unexpectedly, and he couldn't get a replacement for a couple days. His education basically ground to a halt in a few of his classes. One teacher told him there was no work he could do in class without his Chromebook, so he sat there, and in others, he watched others complete their work on their Chromebooks. Where are the textbooks? Why aren't there other options besides having students work on a screen all day long? Of course, I'm sure this isn't all classes, and there are some great active lessons happening in some places. But in other places, there's clearly an over-reliance on Chromebooks. For some, online games and activities have become a substitute for reading books and writing by hand and live teaching and learning. I think we need a digital detox for our students. I'm not saying no technology, but we need to rebalance our resources for teaching and learning. Instead of teaching students to stare at a screen and toggle between 10 different tabs and take screenshots to upload them to Canvas, let's have students talking and listening to each other and their peers. Let's have students learn to make eye contact with people and speak to a room full of peers instead of recording themselves on a flip grid. Let's have students have real-life conversations in classes instead of posting to online discussion boards. There's a lot of talk about social and emotional learning these days, but these are the things that will actually improve students' social skills and emotional development. The Chromebooks are a great tool, but for some, they've become a crutch, and they should be used as needed, but they should not be a substitute for real teaching and real interactions with students.
Let's get textbooks and workbooks and other printed resources back in students' hands. After all the work that this board has done to get kids back in the classroom and seeing each other's faces, it's time to make sure we're actually teaching students in person and not through a screen. Thank you.
Stacy Swanson.
Good evening, everyone. I am the parent of a third grader at Weddington Elementary School. The right to speak and the right to publish under the First Amendment has been interpreted widely to protect individuals and society from government attempts to suppress ideas and information, and to forbid government censorship of books, magazines, and newspapers, as well as art, film, music, and materials on the internet. The Supreme Court actually reaffirmed that right to receive information as a fundamental right protected under the U.S. Constitution when it considered whether a local school board violated the Constitution by removing books from a school library. In that decision, the Supreme Court held that the right to receive ideas is a necessary predicate to the recipient's meaningful exercise of his own rights of speech, press, and political freedom. That's Board of Education versus PICO. I will remind the board that per your own policy, parents can only make decisions on what their child needs and not all children. I will remind the board that they are elected to a government position and have the duty to uphold our rights, including the First Amendment rights of the students. And I know I don't need to address this to the board, whose own policies reinforce the First Amendment and the Library Bill of Rights, but I do feel the need to raise it with individuals that are abusing the tools afforded to parents to subversively censor works that don't align to their beliefs. So you can surely understand my confusion when a board member at yesterday's policy meeting suggested the notion of changing reading material for an entire class due to a single parent complaint. The one dictates the many. A suggestion such as this is in direct conflict of parental rights and our God-given First Amendment rights. We don't throw out a functional and rights-based system when it is challenged. Rather, we rise to the occasion in defense of liberty. I encourage the board to stay the course and stand strong, as you have in issues in the past, and stand by your policies. You didn't cave to public pressure before, and you should not here. You have policy, and policy should not be amended simply because it is working. Your system is functioning as designed, and it was designed to uphold the rights of students and educators as much as it was designed to respect parents and citizens. I wholeheartedly support parents' access to challenge materials as it currently stands and ensure that appropriate checks and balances are in place to protect all student First Amendment rights from harm and overreach. This policy is designed to walk that balance with the minimum government intervention and ensuring freedom. It deserves defending. Thank you.
Andrea Coleman.
"5,000 miles away in the Ukraine, there are men, women, children, even grandparents fighting for their democracy right now. They are fighting for the rights that we here in America have somehow forgotten. Our country was founded on the idea that free speech is a basic tenet of our democracy. This tenet has continually been upheld, and in the precedent-setting case of Roth v. the United States, the definition of what is considered obscene was narrowed to apply only to anything that is utterly without redeeming social importance. There is not a single book being challenged in this county that does not have profound, redeeming social importance. The movement in this county to censor and ban books by a group of parents who in the same breath will preach about liberty and parental free rights confounds me. The sensibilities of these parents who want to prohibit the teaching of anything they falsely deem obscene is extraordinarily un-American. Why is it that a small group of parents is getting to influence curriculum based on what their very narrow version of appropriate is? When these parents use words like inappropriate or controversial, they really mean that they are uncomfortable. Uncomfortable with the truths, these books make them confront both as parents and citizens in this country. Why should the discomfort of these adults be placed above the value that these books have for a generation of kids who will one day be our leaders? What are they so afraid their kids will learn? Shouldn't we be leaning into these hard conversations so that our kids can grow into the critical thinkers and have the ability to make intelligent, informed decisions as they face real life challenges? We have a process in place that allows for curriculum experts and committees to pore over the materials to determine both the age appropriateness and curriculum benefit to the classroom. These curriculum experts have actually read the material and understand the educational significance and direct relationship to the classroom objectives. They've not just found the incendiary passages taken out of context in order to promote a wedge issue in our community. The books that these parents are trying to censor are being inaccurately labeled as pornographic, explicit, or CRT. Their false outrage is only raised when the material may widen their children's worldview. Gay is not an explicit word. Having a trans character in a novel does not equate the book to being pornographic. Reading a memoir about racism is not the same as teaching critical race theory. We are doing our kids a huge disservice if we don't allow them the freedom to grow and learn from content outside of their normal perspective. Are these parents who preach liberty and freedom that scared that their children will one day have an opinion outside of what they are feeding them? As the Ukraine fights literally for their liberty.
Thank you,
Thank
Deb
you.
Helms.
Good evening, and as always, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm extremely excited with all the progress that we've made here in Union County, and it seems like we've even made progress at the state and national level, with Cooper now recommending lifting the mask mandate, and now the federal requirement to wear masks on the bus has been lifted. The children are eating in the cafeteria and they're playing with their schoolmates again. Seems like we're really moving forward from COVID, and that is wonderful, and thank all of you for your hard work on that. One of the underlying topics that COVID was parents started seeing through virtual learning some of the curriculum that their children were being taught, and it really raised some red flags nationwide. I'm actually one of those parents that has been concerned about that, and I am very thankful to see that UCPS has taken notice of this and has taken action to attempt to revise Policy 5-1 to also include a review of donated materials, because it has been determined that not all materials have been properly reviewed for age appropriateness, not preference appropriateness, age appropriateness. The thing is that is most frustrating in this is, having been involved in some of these conversations with other parents who are equally concerned about this, is there seems to be a misunderstanding as to the driving force behind this push to make sure that our children are reading age appropriate material. It seems as though COVID has completely divided our country. Every single topic has become so polarized that it's hard for the community to be objective. I have been involved in conversations on this topic since as far back as last April. What I have heard overwhelmingly recently is a lot of people who seem to be in support of this material are only supportive because they feel like national organizations such as Moms for Liberty are the driving force behind this, not because they've actually reviewed the material and support it. It is simply driven by their disdain for Moms for Liberty. While it is true they were one of the national organizations that brought this to public awareness, the concern in Union County is a community concern, and it is being brought forth by actual parents and grandparents in our communities. Many of them have never even heard of these national organizations. They have heard from others in their communities and in their churches about this inappropriate, age-inappropriate content. I would like to make the appeal to the community. Don't simply make a blanket judgment of this side or that side based on misinformation. I urge you to reconsider your opposition. Open your mind, sit down and read some of this content. Make the decision for yourself. Are you really okay with allowing this material based solely on your misunderstanding and your personal feelings or something you read on social media? I would really hope not. I pray that we have not become so polarized that we can't come together on common issue. Our school system is the lowest funded in the state, and there are always going to be issues. Our school staff and administrators are going to need our support moving forward, and we have to find a way to come together and stand together. Thank you.
Kaylee Smith.
Good evening to the board, parents, and community members here and at home. I look around tonight and I see people who care. I see people who want to be involved in their children's education and upbringing, and I applaud that. I appreciate every single one of you that comes out here every month with the intention of making UCPS better, whether we agree or disagree on any given issue. Your passion for your children is commendable, but I do think we can all do better, and tonight I will challenge you to do so, not just for your child, but for all of the children in our community. I challenge you to find positive ways to give back to the schools, our students, our teachers, and our county. I think we can all agree how very important it is to have the wonderful educators that we have teaching our children. We know that there is currently a teacher shortage and that it will only get worse for the kids in our county if we don't come up together to raise up the professionals that care for and educate our children every day. I ask you to stand with us to ask for better pay for our teachers. Please take a moment to look up the pay scale and how unfair it is to our educators. I ask you to stand with us to ask for more money for our school district. We are the worst funded school district in the entire state. The fact that our children do so well is a testament to the teachers and administrators that work every day to lift our kids up and educate them without the funding they so dearly deserve. But they shouldn't have to overwork themselves on too small of a budget. Imagine what they could do if they were adequately supported and compensated, if our district was funded on par with the best funded areas. And finally, I challenge you to volunteer to help all of the children in our county, not just your own child. Title I schools are in desperate need of volunteers to read with children who are behind grade level. They need parents that want to be involved, and you can be that parent even if it isn't your child attending that school. These schools lack the extra funds that the wealthier schools like Weddington, Marvin, and Cuthbertson clusters have thanks to the generosity of the parents in those areas. There are thousands of ways to get involved in our schools that don't involve creating more work or fear for our educators and school staff. I ask you to please ask yourself before the next meeting, is this working for good? Is this working for all? Am I helping raise up teachers and administrators so that they can lift up our children? I really believe that with the amount of active, caring, involved parents that I see here tonight, we could do amazing things in our schools and communities. We just need to point ourselves in the most positive and helpful direction. So I ask you to ask yourself, what can I do to lift up UCPS today? And thank you all for being here tonight to stand up for our kids.
Melissa Fellanowitz.
Like others, I'm here to discuss books, book banning, and censoring. I find it odd that the majority of books on this book challenge list are by or about minority and marginalized communities, and I hope that's a coincidence. I also find it odd that one person can challenge a list of 21 books at every middle school in the county. That seems strange to me. It also seems strange that the reason for that challenge is sexual content in all of these books, because that's not true. This is one of the books, George. There's no sex in this book at all, like not even a kiss. It's disingenuous to say that this book has sexual content in it. Now, what this book does have, the thing that's wrong, is it has a transgender character. I've heard in public comments before, folks say transgender and homosexual characters are a problem. They're inappropriate. Y'all, we have LGBTQ children in every single one of our elementary, middle, and high schools in this county. Those children are not inappropriate. They are the children that we're supposed to be serving at this public school system. These children are at higher risk of self-harm and suicide. We know that. By removing representation of them from the library, we can only do more harm. We're also telling children not in the LGBTQ community that it's okay to try to erase these kids, to other them. Studies also tell us that if even just one single adult, one grown-up, supports that LGBTQ child, there's a 40% lower chance that they will commit suicide. I would hope we are all on that page. I would hope we are all on that page. These children are precious.
Erasing these children from our libraries is inappropriate. These kids belong in our schools. These kids are wanted and worthy. They're already in our classrooms. As a public school, we accept all comers. These kids are among them. Don't let them down. Don't fail them. The results will be catastrophic.
Heidi Crestaldi.
Good evening. First of all, thank you. I'm so proud to be a resident of this county that has such a bold school board. I love that you led the state and the nation in the choices and the decisions that you made for our children. Thank you so much. But I'm here again this month to implore you to get the indoctrination out of our classrooms. Last month, I gave you one big concrete example of indoctrination that happened to my daughter. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you that there are many other seemingly small examples of indoctrination that my kids hear and see every day in school. And while I approach school administration and these things are taken care of, all of these small things add up. Our kids are being bombarded with their teachers' opinions, and most of them are left-leaning propaganda. I'm going to give you a couple examples. There's a school counselor that has a big Black Lives Matter sticker in their office. There's a middle school teacher that takes time out of their lesson to lecture the kids on the importance of getting the COVID-19 vaccine. There's a civics teacher that tells their class that they hope that Union County flips and votes blue in the next election. There's a teacher that talks about equity on the regular basis as the only way forward for our society, as we are a society built on racism. There's an art teacher who rejected my daughter's idea for a piece of art about respecting the American flag, yet let another student create a pride flag that now hangs in the school. There's a history teacher that has told their class that we need to be paying reparations to minority groups for things that happened hundreds of years ago. There's a teacher who asked their students for their preferred pronouns at the start of the semester. And these are only some of the things that my kids have told me. I don't have time to tell you everything. And the scary part is that I have 2 teenagers, so you know that I don't hear everything. Why are these teachers and staff talking about and encouraging my kids to talk about tenets of critical race theory, social justice causes, gender dysphoria, political affiliation, sexual orientation, and personal health care choices? Teachers have to stop sharing their beliefs. That's not their job. It's simply not their job. We all teach our kids from a very early age to respect their teachers, to listen to them as authority figures. And because of this, students take what teachers are saying as fact. That list I just shared with you, those are not facts. Those are individual teacher opinions that have no place in the classroom. From what I understand, the Union County policy is neutrality. Teachers are to teach from a neutral position, and that means no opinions. Only both sides of the story, encouraging thought and discussion, letting kids form their own opinions. Once again, teach them how to think, not what to think. And to be clear and fair, this is not every teacher. My kids have had some amazing teachers that purely teach academics from a neutral point of view, and I so appreciate them. But as we say about apples, one bad apple can spoil the bunch. I again implore you to get the indoctrination out of our schools. Union County public school teachers need to stop sharing their opinions. They need to get back to academics and let our kids form their own beliefs. Thank you.
Stephen Smith.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I just wanted to say thank you for all y'all have done for us in the last year. Ever since COVID has hit and all that, we've all been affected by it, either positive or negatively. And we've all probably lost a family member or whatever, whatnot. And I have myself. So I felt everybody's pain. But it finally time that we realized that we got to live with it, like you said in the last meeting with the Board of Education and the county commissioners and all that kind of stuff. If I'd had a chance to say it earlier, I would have told you my beliefs a long time ago. This virus, as it is, sometimes it's spoke to it or thought of it more like a religion. It can affect everybody, whether you get it or you don't. And 2, if you do get it, it can definitely going to affect everybody differently. It's about like the easiest way to make it simply in layman's terms for people to understand. It's about like a bee sting, poison ivy, poison oak, a food biology. Some people can eat peanuts, no problem. Some people eat peanuts, have a bad reaction. It's simple as that. So whether or not you choose to get a vaccination, you don't choose to get a vaccination, choose to wear a mask, don't choose to wear a mask, that's your own personal opinion. And I, very personally, I can agree with it. But what I can't really agree with, if you treat it more like a religion and everybody that wants to wear a mask and all that kind of stuff, you're forcing your religion on me. And we have a right of, back when I was in school, we were taught that we had separation of church and state. So therefore, if you get where I'm coming from, we allow all religions within our school. I was taught the Quran back when I was in middle school. That was a book we studied from. I was also taught the Bible. And I put more of my belief on this book right here as far as my reading concerned. I don't support banning the books. I am one of those that's also a member of Moms for Liberty, just because, you know, we support all freedoms. And if this is the book you want to take your instructions from, great. If you're not, you need to pick it up and take a reading from it. At least once in your life, read it, if you get where I'm coming from. And so there are several good prescriptions in this Bible here that I could tell you. I can't quote them right off the bat without sitting down and reading it. As you can see, I don't have a paper in front of you because I'm speaking from my mind, I'm speaking from the heart. I'm not speaking from a pre-prep. But several things come to mind. That's why I don't have no other gods before me, if you get what I'm saying, sir. There I should walk to the valley of the shadow of death, I should fear no evil. They're out and shall comfort me. As you can see, as I'm speaking, I don't get it quite as right. But sure, Psalm 23:4. Look it up. That's what Google's for. Thank you.
Thank
And y'all
you.
have a great day.
Thank you. Harold Schmacher.
Good evening. Good to see you guys again. You guys have a challenging job. I don't think I want it. I wouldn't want it. It's month in and month out, you guys are pushed hard. And so I appreciate the work that you guys do. A lot of passion coming from the parents on a lot of different issues. What I want to talk about today is really challenging you guys again. So sorry about that, guys. But I want to challenge you to remove any requirements to attend school from a vaccination standpoint. And it's interesting, I decided to speak on this a month ago, and, you know, to hear Ron DeSantis talking about, he's calling it buck the CDC. And I agree with that. They're off the rails, they're out of control. The pharmaceutical industry is out of control. I'm not anti-vax. I've come up with my own term. I'm going to call it smart vax. Let me give you some examples. Japan does not vaccinate until kids are 2 years old. I call that smart. This doctor here wrote a book called The Vaccine Friendly Plan, Dr. Paul Thomas. He recommends vaccinating at age 3 or after and spreading it out. Why spread it out? They only approve those vaccinations for that one shot. But now we've quadrupled the schedule. So if you're given 8, 10, 12 shots, that child now is getting maybe 100 times the safety limit that they should be getting, but they're only going to look at the one shot. Dr. Thomas, in his practice, developed this plan. His practice and other doctors that follow it, their results as far as things like autism are incredible. We went from 1 in 10,000 children getting autism to 1 in 45 today. In his practice, 0. They're getting 0 autism by waiting on that. So that's not anti-vax, that's smart vax. The CDC is required by that 1986 law to do studies against, vax and unvax. They refuse to do it. They haven't done it. They're not following the law. That's another reason I want you to pull it and say, if they're not going to follow the law, we're not going to follow your schedule. And that's in that 1986 law. What's interesting about that is it was called the National Vaccine Injury Act. It's a strange name for a law that gives pharmaceuticals immunity, isn't it? Matter of fact, it mentions vaccine injury 143 times, deaths 93 times. Safe and effective is only mentioned 3 times. It was a bait and switch to get immunity, and since that time, they quadrupled the schedule. So last thing I'm going to read real quick here is, don't have a lot of time here, but those who cannot remember history are condemned to repeat it. I think it's time to start just addressing that and maybe get some public forums and get some speaking on that. Thank you.
Claire Utila.
Good evening. My name is Claire Utila, and I'm going to shift course a little bit. My husband and I have lived in Union County for approximately 8 years. We have 4 children. My oldest graduated from Parkwood High School in 2018. Our younger 3, I currently homeschool. They are between the ages of 10 and 14. I am here tonight to ask you to reconsider your position on prohibiting homeschool students from participating in middle and high school athletics. A few years ago, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association created a pathway for individual LEAs to open their athletic programs to homeschool students. UCPS decided at that time to not allow homeschool students. Since then, a lot has changed in the district, so we are asking you to reconsider. Since 2020, the number of homeschool students in North Carolina has increased by 19%. A conservative estimate is that there are 9,600 homeschool students in our district. We are the 4th largest district homeschool county in the state. In the same time period, UCPS has seen its enrollment numbers drop, and whereas there was hope those numbers would return after the pandemic, it is my understanding this isn't happening at the rates you had hoped. Other changes since that initial conversation is the traditional school model has changed drastically. Many UCPS students are spending less time on campuses with the addition of taking online classes in dual enrollment. There are athletic teams in the district that have struggled or been unable to put together a full team to compete. A change in policy could help those teams and others in the district have a larger talent pool to pull from, as well as be a community building bridge between the 2 groups of county students. Part of the eligibility requirements created by the NCHSAA is that students are at a minimum required to take 1 class on campus. In the past, this might have seemed like a challenge to build team morale and cohesion when a student would only be on campus 1 class a day. But today, according to sources we spoke with, there are students who are dually enrolled and taking online classes that don't step foot on their campus until practice. This requirement might also benefit the district in helping increase enrollment numbers and funding. There are several school districts in the state that have already opened their doors to homeschool student athletes, including our neighbor Charlotte Meck. We have emailed you links to their policies to give you a framework for creating a homeschool athletic eligibility pathway for UCPS. In preparing tonight, I spoke with UCPS's Director of Athletics, Nelson Garner, who said originally he agreed with the district policy, but seeing how things have changed would be open to reconsidering adding homeschool athletes to the UCPS program. In closing, there are other ways. I hope you'll give this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrickiska.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patrickiska. I have 3 children at Antioch. I'll confess, like I believe most of the people that were in this room, I didn't read all 21 of the books that were up for reconsideration. I've heard of a couple of them, but I never actually read them. So I read the teacher's guides. I felt like that was a good approximation for what would be in there. And from what I could tell from the teacher's guides, it looks like these books are about kids that are going through some hard times that are pretty real. Characters in these books are coping or failing to cope with real life issues that put marginalized youth at risk: depression, abuse, belonging, identity, purpose, real things for middle school kids. One of the kids that's alienated and at risk might find that they're not as alone as they think they are if they discover that there are others like them in literature. So morally, I think they should be returned to the shelves for those reasons. Ethically, I think they should be returned because upholding their removal violates school board policy and unduly exposes the school to lawsuits, frankly. The Library Bill of Rights, which was adopted in 1939, in which the board invokes in its guiding principle, states materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. This is why we read about Huck and Jim, Scout and Jem, Anne Frank, Hester Pym, Billy Pilgrim, other characters representing divergent doctrines at the time they were written and when I read them in high school. To be clear, I'm not addressing the board directly on this. I know you guys didn't submit 21 books for reconsideration, but it's patently clear that the items on this list collectively represent belonging and acceptance of groups that feel they're not accepted. Removing these books clearly would reinforce a belief of partisan and doctrinal disapproval, not only of the books, but of the students that identify with them. And that's in opposition to the board's guiding principles, so they can't really take action on this list without violating their own charter. Now, as parents, we don't tell other people how to raise their kids. No system of education seeks to teach by withholding, to foster understanding by censoring, or to grow by suppressing. The latter practices have been shunned and criticized as un-American for generations. And speaking of un-American, I would like to thank whoever submitted all 21 books for this list for reconsideration at the same time. There's very little chance anybody would have noticed one or two, but submitting all 21 at once kind of tipped their hand. No reasonable person could look at a collection this size and think suppressing them is anything other than an attempt to advance a political agenda of intolerance and bigotry. 47 years ago, New York School Board took 10 books off the shelves and was sued for it. That was referenced earlier today. The court declared that no local school boards may remove books from the school library shelves simply because they don't like the ideas. Thank you.
Becky Smith.
Good evening. My name is Becky Smith. I am a Waxhaw resident, a Parkwood graduate, a former middle school teacher for UCPS, and currently in my 7th year as a homeschooling mom to my 4 children, ages 7 to 15. And tonight I come asking you to revisit your current policy that prohibits homeschoolers from participating in district school athletics. I believe allowing homeschoolers the option to participate could add value to the athletic programs. As you have seen, education has changed much over the last few years. The number of students attending non-public schools has increased by leaps and bounds. Currently, Union County has the 4th largest population of homeschoolers in North Carolina, with approximately 10,000 students being schooled at home by their parents. Our state homeschooling numbers have increased so much that a couple of years ago, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association decided it was necessary to establish a pathway for eligibility for homeschoolers to play sports at their local high schools. Nearby LEAs like Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools and Iredell-Statesville Schools have taken advantage of this and do currently allow homeschoolers to play on their teams as long as they meet eligibility requirements. My fellow homeschool moms spoke of the potential financial benefit in having homeschoolers enroll to take the necessary class or classes to become eligible. But I want to speak to other benefits. In allowing homeschoolers to play, you would be reaching a whole new community of families along with their wide support systems. When my son played football this past fall, it was never just myself or my husband at the game. It was most always the whole family, including grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, and other homeschool families and friends wanting to support him. These are all new fans that would not normally be attending UCPS games or spending money on concessions. Another benefit is the increase in involvement. Homeschool families tend to be very involved in their children's education as well as other areas, and this would mean an increase in volunteer support for the various athletic programs. I've been speaking generically using the term homeschooler as I've been speaking, but I'm speaking about a group of younger members of this Union County community. They live in Union County neighborhoods, hang out with their friends, and are part of clubs and other activities. And yes, more than likely, they were the ones that served you when you stopped by your local Chick-fil-A. But allowing them to participate in UCPS athletics would help unite them with their community even more while bringing a value to the district's programs. I ask you to allow eligible homeschoolers to play sports at their district middle schools and high schools and put the necessary policies and programs in place for this mutually beneficial partnership. I've emailed you a letter along with links to the eligibility requirements per the NCHSAA, as well as information about the programs our neighboring counties use to meet eligibility requirements. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Terry Blummer.
Good evening. My name is Terry Bloomer. I want to say thank you to the school board that has persevered and stood up for both our parental and children's rights. I know that many of you had to deal with a lot of harsh criticisms, both personally and professionally. Thank you. My husband and I have lived in Union County for 16 years, 15 of those years with our adopted son, Andrew. We knew that our son had developmental delays when we adopted him. Those delays were eventually labeled as autism, along with several other diagnoses. During our adoption process, we chose to move into Union County mainly for the excellent school system we had heard so much about. What we got was different than we had imagined. The school system is great if you have a neurotypical kid. I've listened for the last 8 to 10 months to everything from masks, science, parental rights, but a couple of things have really stood out to me. Inclusion, equality. Let me tell you, there's a large group of children in this county that are excluded, divided, and not treated equally compared to their neurotypical classmates. These are the exceptional children, and I'm here to speak for them. Let's speak to inclusion. In elementary and middle school, kids like my son were allowed to participate in specials like music, art, PE for short periods of time. However, in high school, very little, if any, of that is done, unless it's written into their IEP. It's almost if that little bit of inclusion becomes significantly more exclusion. The Transition to Adulthood program keeps these kids contained for the majority of the day in one classroom. During exam weeks, these kids are sent off campus for community-based training. What that says to me is, we don't want your child on campus while the neurotypical kids take tests. It's too distracting. Let's talk equality. When COVID hit and everything shut down, we as parents learned a lot about our kids' schooling. But the children with disabilities, our children, missed out on so much more. There was little to no speech or OT services. At times, IEPs were not implemented appropriately, if at all. There was some virtual instruction, but not much, and even less social interaction. Fast forward spring 2021. For all other students, sports and games were resumed. For the special needs students, nothing was done. It's been over 2 years since school-wide Special Olympics has taken place, and so far I've heard nothing planned for this year. How is that equality? It isn't. It's borderline discrimination. Our Special Needs Advisory Council hasn't met once this school year. As this board discusses equality and inclusion, I would ask you to consider and educate yourself what real inclusion and equality would look like for the children with special needs.
Madam Chair, could I ask the last speaker to repeat her name?
Terry Bloomer.
Okay. Ms. Bloomer, would you do me a favor and email me, please? Yes. To my UCPS email, gary.sides.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sandra Green.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Sandra Green. I just wanted to come here and say really quick how proud I am. Kudos for leading the way with mask optional all year and contact tracing and quarantine. It's encouraging to see many other schools in North Carolina following suit. I'm happy that kids are going back to everything's going back to normal. It's good to see parents involved in their children's education, whether it's volunteering or some of us, like myself, who stand here today, who are looking to sit on that side. Children are going back to the cafeteria full time for lunch. And with that said, we see the stress that students and educators face daily. So I feel that the lunch time block needs to be extended if that's something that the board can look into. Maybe like adding an additional 30 minutes or something, because they really are, they need time to decompress, not just the kids, but also the teachers. But as we continue to move forward, our focus now needs to be on doing everything we can to ease the burden the pandemic has placed on our school system. The fact is that due to COVID, our educators have had to work extra hard the past 2 years, and they've been doing it all without parental support. As I've been coming to meetings and speaking to the community, I've met a lot of educators and even some former educators who've had to leave the profession because of the pressure put on them from the state. For instance, an email I received from a teacher here at UCPS, this is some of the things she had to say. 1, our schools do not have enough resources to meet the requirements of their MTSS students, which is the multi-tiered support system since COVID. There's so many students in Tier 3 alone that are so behind now that one teacher cannot meet all their needs. That's not including requirements teachers need to complete for students with IEPs and students with 504 plans. iReady. Some schools do not have the updated Chromebooks, which supports iReady math program, but yet students are required to complete a certain amount of time in iReady weekly. So Chromebooks are needing to be shared between grades and again, taking away valuable time in instruction. If the state's going to require these programs to be completed, then the educators need these actual resources for their students to be able to complete them. Beginning Teacher Support Program. A nice idea, but the requirement for this program is very burdensome, and all it does is create additional work that is seemingly unnecessary. The Letters or Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling is a great tool and a wonderful program, but with everything else, they cannot get all the requirements done. The state has now scheduled their letters PDs over the top of the graduation this year, so some teachers will have to choose between their required letters training or attending their child's graduation in Union County. As many educators are grateful for the efforts made recently to compensate them, it's felt like it was too little too late since many are now leaving in droves. Teachers planning times need to be protected as many feel neglected, and they can't get substitutes as there's very little incentive to continue teaching. So there needs to be more time for the TAs in their classrooms. Although we've come so far the last 2 years, we still have a mountain to climb, and I look forward to going through each of these issues in a timely manner to help support not only our teachers and admins, but also our students and our parents. Thank you very much.
Kelly McLaughlin. Kate Stanley.
Hello, board members. My name is Kate Stanley. I'm a parent, citizen, and EC teacher in Union County. I'm here to speak with you regarding the need for full-time reading intervention teachers in our district's elementary schools. Currently, only 9 elementary schools have reading intervention teachers on staff. These schools are Title I schools and are provided government funding. The district's non-Title I elementary schools are not allotted specific reading teacher positions through the district. That leaves literally thousands of students in Union County without access to critical early reading intervention outside of their regular classroom. Although socioeconomic status is a factor in a student's predicted reading success, it is not, of course, the only factor. Genes, heredity, and brain anatomy also contribute to the growth of reading skills. Reading difficulties do not affect only students that live in the boundaries of our Title I schools. Let me say that again. Reading difficulties do not affect only students that live in Title I within the boundaries of our Title I schools. Our district is ignoring the fact that students with early reading difficulties are in all of our 30 elementary schools. We know from decades of research that reading intervention is paramount for students with reading difficulties. The research clearly shows that low levels of literacy are preventable. At-risk students can be helped before they develop serious chronic reading delays. Early identification of these students, coupled with early interventions, can reduce the percentage of student performance below benchmark by 4th grade. Sadly, our district has not taken this into consideration, the overwhelming amount of research on literacy difficulties. Last month, I asked our district administration why our non-Title I schools were not allotted specific reading positions. I was told by our district human resource administrator to, quote, advocate to my principal as the district develops priorities and budgets. However, principals already understand this need for the central role and have repeatedly asked for reading intervention teachers in their school. Our principals, teachers, and national research findings continue to be ignored. Each of you, as the Board of Education, can help change this inequality in our elementary schools. The research clearly shows the dire need for elementary schools to provide early reading intervention instruction. All of us in this room want what is best for the kids of Union County. Please help us in providing full-time reading intervention teachers at all Union County elementary schools. Thank you.
Ms. Stanley, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
That concludes public comments and brings us to the minutes needing approval from January 25th and February 1st.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Reverend Benchen. That brings us to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we will now turn it over to Dr. Houlihan for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, board, and good evening, Union County Public Schools. First off, it is basketball season, and we want to say that and remind the public that our annual reading competition, Books and Brackets, is back. We are in year 5 and are very excited about the challenge this year. The theme is For the Love of Reading, and I want to encourage all of our elementary students to continue reading and really have fun with this year's challenge. We kicked this off last week. We will announce the schools that advance to the next round every Thursday at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. And as a reminder, on April the 1st, we will have our annual celebration at Wingate University in person to celebrate our Elite 8 and Final 4 schools and name the winning school. And board members, all of you are welcome to join us in what is usually an annual, pretty awesome third grade pep rally. Bring your earplugs because you will need it. Staying with the reading theme, tomorrow is Read Across America Day. This day was established by the National Education Association in 1998 to help get kids excited about reading. And many of our elementary schools have started celebrating this week through a variety of activities. Great job. From an athletic standpoint, we are fortunate this evening to have 3 UCPS teams advance to the state playoffs, the 4th round. And I have been keeping updated. I will announce a few scores. Congratulations to the Weddington Warriors, who won in a very close one tonight over Chambers, 58-56. As my last report was a 1-point advantage for Monroe men's going into the 4th quarter. And unfortunately, to Parkwood women's, who made it to the 4th round, they fell in a heartbreaker tonight to Robinson, 46-42. So congratulations to Parkwood ladies on a absolutely wonderful season. 6 wrestlers this year won individual championships at the state wrestling state championship in Greensboro on February. We also want to congratulate Coach Johnny Sowell on winning his 500th basketball game last week for Monroe High School. Next, Parkwood's Chris Linthicum was named the North Carolina Wrestling Coaches Association 2021 Girls Wrestling Coach of the Year. So congratulations to Chris. And finally, CJ Anthony from Porter Ridge was named the high school boys basketball senior as voted by readers. And lastly, this is a reminder that our student support department is offering a series of workshops to help parents with some very difficult topics this month. The next workshop is March 17th at Piedmont High School. The topic is grief. There will be several therapists and other staff present to help families who may need it. Board members, this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask Jared McCraw to join us for a COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Ms. Merrill. Good evening, board members, Dr. Houlihan. I come to you tonight with some good news. Throughout this pandemic, it's been up and down, but tonight I come to you with good news of decreasing trends throughout our state and locally and in Union County schools. So I'll start by giving you an update as far as the positivity rate. Today, the positivity rate as of this morning was 10.3%. If you remember the last meeting, it was above 40%, so it's down dramatically to 10.3%. Our 7-day average of new cases is down to 55.7 new cases per day. That was this morning. So that's down from almost 500 cases last month per day. Some of the most telling signs within our school system: last week, we had 43 impactful COVID cases across our district. 43. The week before, we had 127. The week before that, 183. And then 4 weeks ago, we were at 387. So that shows you the dramatic decrease in COVID cases, even internally within Union County schools. Our nurses and our school staff, they can feel that. We see it. Because of those decreases, we will end the daily messages that we're sending to parents and staff of impactful cases within our school system. However, we will continue to notify families of students as required by educational plans. UCPS school nurses and school staff, they continue to do an excellent job, you all. They should be commended for that. They've done an excellent job over these 2 years. They can now focus on non-COVID related issues and get back to focusing on instruction. This concludes my COVID report for the month of March. Are there any questions related to my report?
So I have just a question for you and Dr. Houlihan. Some of the speakers today talked about getting back to normal and the schools getting back to normal with respect to parents coming into the schools. We know for a fact that the best schools are the ones where parents are involved. And I know that it's been a long time that we've had parents not being involved because of COVID. So are we across the district telling principals that we're going to?
The short answer is yes. I mean, we continue to work with our principals on a weekly and monthly basis to encourage that. As a reminder, we started kind of encouraging parents that were volunteers to get engaged on the academic end, but we also know that there are families and parents who want to get involved on the non-academic end. I think we need to make that transition. We only have 3 months of school left. We have spring break also, and I think now is the time, if we haven't been doing that, to begin shifting in that direction. We have a general principals meeting this Thursday where this will be a topic of conversation. Our principals, I think, have done a very good job easing into one transition after next. But I believe as we kind of see this moving much more towards an endemic, we need to continue to find ways to get more parents involved and physically present in buildings where possible. So Mr. McCraw will help carry that message along with me on Thursday.
There's first graders who've never sat in the cafeteria. There's first graders who haven't had parents come to the school at all or have lunch with them or help in the classroom. So I'm hoping that we can get back to this normalcy and let the parents in and let dances happen and all the other stuff and recesses with.
It's change management, right? We as adults, I think, have been following certain rules for 2 years now. And I think trying to get folks back to where we were in 2019 in some places has been a bit of a challenge, but we're moving in the right direction. I know at the high schools, I said to our staff this past week, we are having proms, right? And the answer is absolutely we're having proms. You know, we're getting back to all of that where we were pre-COVID. So that's exciting news for us, but I agree. We need to continue kind of carrying that message to get more involvement where we can.
I would take care of that, Ms. Heintel. Our schools should look like they did prior to COVID.
I wanted to ask some questions along the same lines. Have the principals been encouraged to return, especially on the elementary school level, all grade levels returning to the cafeteria? Has that message been?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I met with the principals, the elementary principals, and said by March 1st that all elementary schools should look like they did prior to COVID, which was 2 years ago, March the 11th, I guess, March 13th. They all understood that message. There may be certain schools that have construction, different things going on. We asked them to work with us individually if they have something that they need to. But our schools, as of March 1st today, should look like they did prior to COVID.
And that includes children at the appropriate age levels mingling in at the playground at recess, correct?
Yes, sir. We do have safety zone guidelines that we've always followed even prior to COVID, but they will look like they did prior to COVID.
I would also like to second the comment Ms. Heintel made about social events. I think particularly, well, on the middle school and the high school level, I would encourage, with the administration's support, any social activities that the schools can put together. It doesn't have to be fancy, just bring in a DJ or record player if somebody still has one. Play records, get the kids to mingle. Doesn't have to be a fancy production, but I think any opportunity that we can provide social interaction for our students in the middle and high school levels, I would encourage that. I would also, the comments, one of the speakers, the Special Olympics, I hope that would be restarted. Okay. Dr. Breedlove, I'd like to have the EC director, if she could attend our next curriculum committee meeting, and we can talk about, I don't think it's been a good while since we've had an update. With the EC department. Does that mean how did that have to happen when I was talking? Well, I'll take that. Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons. Okay. So it's back to the future as far as we're concerned.
Yes.
It's back to the future.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So I make a motion to remain mask optional.
All those in favor say
Aye.
aye.
And I thank you, Jimmy. That motion passes. I did want to make one comment that was not mentioned tonight. That to make sure that it has been communicated that effective last Friday that the CDC now says or the federal mandate with masks on buses is no longer required.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Merrill, that has been communicated to schools. We sent a message to families. So that has been communicated. The CDC requirement has been dropped, and that is not required anymore. And we've communicated that.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
as far as signs being removed from schools or buses,
Yes, I followed up with a message after Ms. Staubert and the communications message to let principals know to work with their custodial teams, facilities teams, to make sure all signage on the exterior, interior of the building related to COVID protocols was down. If anybody sees any of that, please let us know. I told Dr. Houlihan, sometimes you've gotten used to it over 2 years and you may miss it. So just let us know if you see something.
I've gotten a lot of messages over the past couple of days. I think our bus drivers are very happy to have that freedom and be able to get fresh air when they're opening and closing our doors. So just wanted to say that publicly.
And they
for the
like
first
to
time.
see the kids' smiles.
Smiles.
That's
And of
awesome.
course, for anyone that, wants to continue wearing their mask, by all means, that is welcome as well, but it's no longer a federal mandate.
I have a quick question too, real fast. As far as schools that have school lockers and want to use them, can they use them now? That's another thing I just thought of.
Yeah, Mr. Helms, we've allowed them to use school lockers throughout this. A lot of times we've just asked them to work with their principals. Some students don't like to use lockers, but we can use lockers though. I mean, there's no reason we can't.
I was under the impression, I had been informed that our middle school principals had made a unanimous decision earlier that they would not be allowing lockers this school year. So which is it?
So they did talk about that, but we told them they had to work with the students that wanted to use lockers so that they could use lockers. There's no reason COVID related, they can use lockers. I mean, it's initially, I think we were trying to keep the hallways
Close
clear,
contact
close
and-
contacts. There's not any reason anymore. So if a student wants a locker, and they don't have a locker, have them see their principal.
Okay, very good. That brings us to policies for review.
Good evening, members of the board. There are 4 policies for review before you tonight. Policy 1-5, duties of the chair. Policy 1-8, election of officers and voting method. Policy 1-12, public participation at board meetings. And policy 1-17, statement on non-discrimination. If you have any questions about those, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Great. And I just want to remind the board that policy 5-1 is going to be returned to the policy committee from consent. That brings us to board comments.
Well, last word I have, Monroe is down 43-45 with 17 seconds left in the game. Yeah. Shoot.
Congratulations to all the teams who've been playing. Great.
I want to second that. I have enjoyed this basketball season probably more than any other since being involved in Union County Public Schools. There's been some exciting games, exciting tournament play, both the ladies and the men's. And it's great to have 4 teams that made it as far as they did, and we still have still rooting for Weddington. So it's been an exciting season.
I just wanted to say that I had the good fortune of covering duty-free lunch along with Ms. Heintel because Mr. Sides hosted a luncheon. And so to Mr. Ochoa and Mr. Santana, thank you. And it's so obvious how appreciated teachers are when you cover a duty-free lunch. I mean, I literally left there like I survived. So to all teachers out there, we all appreciate you very much. Thank you.
The Finance Committee will meet on March 22nd at 8 a.m. on Zoom, and the Facilities Committee will meet on March 23rd at 9 a.m. at the PDC.
The Strategic Planning, Information Technology, and Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled to meet March 23rd at 7:30 here at the PDC.
And curriculum will meet at 10 o'clock on the same day, the 23rd, also here at the PDC.
And policy will meet March 15th at 8 o'clock via Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.